Hey everyone, Bob Gundu here, and I'm going to do a review on the Trost slider. And when I first saw this slider online, I was very intrigued because it does have a few interesting features that I've never seen on another slider. And the first obvious one was the two axes portion of this thing, which I'll explain in a second. And what I really liked about the slider that got my attention was the durability, because most sliders at this size have issues with the way the base is connected to the slider because of the heavier camera that I use, which is the red camera, which is around 15 to 20 pounds minimum. I wanted something that was a little more durable and I didn't have any flex in it, and this one seemed to fit the bill. And the other unique thing about this slider is the way it connects to your tripod with these unique patent pending collars. So, and also, the other thing that I really liked on this slider was the drag capabilities. And what seems like it should just be a brake actually works really well as a controlled drag for when you want those really nice, smooth tracking shots. So again, the build quality is phenomenal. It's actually quite heavy, which is fine because I needed durability over portability. And this one is the 1 meter, 100 centimeters. They come in 75 centimeters. And the accessory here is a 50 centimeter second axis accessory. And like I said, the build quality is phenomenal. The wood on the end is a really nice touch. The end of it has these rubber stoppers, which prevent it from damaging when it gets to the end. The connection to your tripod is a 3/8 threaded stud here, or bolt. In order to connect it to a larger fluid head that you probably are using with your Red or Alexa, you'll need, well, what I'm using is a Cinovate Dromos, which goes onto the 3/8 bolt at the bottom, and your fluid head goes on top. The other thing you could use is the Gitso, something like this anyway. I like using the Gitso. It has 3 axes of rotation. So why would you even need a 2-axis slider? Well, I'll show you how this connects right now as well. So you put the 3/8 bolt down, connect this, and then it tightens very simply. So you have 2 axes like that. So typically with a slider, you were shooting sideways, so you can do this type of motion. But what you can't do is a camera facing forward and down because the track's in the way. So you either have to put the camera below your slider or use something like this where you can attach your camera this way and have it facing forward, and you're actually traveling over the objects or whatever you're shooting. Gives you a little more flexibility because you have a bigger zone to move your camera in, because without a slider you'd be moving your tripod around. And this actually speeds up a lot of setups because you're covering quite a bit of zone here. So like I was saying, the Trost slider has a really unique way of attaching itself to the using this patent pending collar. What's neat about the collar is that it's round, so you can actually position your second axis, even at the tripod level. You can actually rotate it quite quickly by just loosening up the collar, and it comes off. And it's a simple squeezing mechanism, but there's so much surface here for it to grab onto that it actually makes a really solid connection. The collars themselves can easily slide along the whole track just by loosening these 2 screws, and you can also add additional collars onto the track. So the smaller one comes with just one, but you can add another one and spread this one out if you like. Same goes for the big guy. You can move along the whole track, and they can be detached, and the collars can move onto the same side as the base. And that allows you to mount it upside down with a tripod on either end. And you have a underslung mode. The bottom of the base plate has multiple points for you to attach a C-stand or a light stand or another tripod, because there's 2 holes here for a C-stand, and there's a 1/4-20 to put a light stand on the other end, and a 3/8 to attach it to a tripod. So for lighter cameras like an SLR, you can probably just attach the slider from the center and not have to worry about the other ends. But for a heavier camera, I would definitely recommend using a C-stand or a tripod on the other end. That's what's great about the slider, is that you can attach the tripod to any point. There's 2 tripods here. This is a typical 100mm bowl tripod with a half bowl attachment. And this is a Gitzo with a flat base with the 3/8 thread on top. The people at Trost recommend having a half bowl as your base. You could just have your fluid head there and attach this on top, but then you're going to need another fluid head on top. So these things are really ingenious in the sense that they're essentially a handle too. So you just have to put the 3/8 on there, and it's so quickly to get this thing tight because of this handle, and so quickly you can detach these and put it onto my Gitzo type of tripod. These are really good because it's actually quite strong, and I have the ability to have a more precise height because I have a crank on it. The collar basically goes on top of the base plate, and then the collar tightens. I put the Gitzo head on this, and I have my red camera here. Now what I'm about to do, I would not recommend you do this with a camera like this. This camera is quite heavy, but just to show the strength of the collar, I wanted to just show that I'm able to, again, the center post of this tripod is sandbagged. So I'm going to just move this over, and there is barely any flex in this slider. So I'm going to use the collar on the far right. The base plate is still attached to the tripod, and I'm going to use a C-stand on this side. So you can just slip it on there. You have some flexibility. You don't have to lock it down yet. And the C-stand pops into, tighten that up, and then once you got it level, you can tighten the collar. And man, I was surprised that just by having a C-stand on one side without having it actually attached to the slider, but because the slider is 15 pounds, it gives sufficient amount of weight, and it really doesn't jiggle much at all. You could just put the exact same setup that you have on this side, so you can have 2 very solid tripods with a collar and a base plate, and this thing's not going to move. But if you're mobile and you're in the field, instead of a C-stand, you could bring yourself a monopod that is carbon fiber that actually screws into the 1/4-20 or the 3/8 underneath this. So you could use a light stand. And again, the collars themselves can actually adjust. So now that we have 1 tripod and 1 C-stand, and even with this configuration, it's rock solid, I'm able to tilt the camera forward. And most sliders at this point, the mechanism that they typically use has some flex in it, but this is what I love about the slider. I'm able to get these kind of moves without it bouncing, without it tilting up at all. I feel like it's almost made out of one big piece of metal. So I'm going to put on the second axis, and remember you need to pop down the 3/8 bolt. And remember I was telling that you can attach the collar anywhere along track. And so I've moved it from the center on the end just to show you an extreme case here. And you can attach it to any angle you like. I'm going to put it right out and tighten the collar. And so what I'm about to do right now is kind of extreme, but again, I'm going to show you how strong this connections are. I'm going to put my red camera on my head. And so in effect, I've just created this mini jib-like situation where if I wanted to ever have a shot out here, again, look how extreme I'm doing this. I have 2 tripods this time instead of just the C-stance, just to keep it more secure, but that's insane. And so there's no flex. I'm able to do a jib-like shot. I normally would have had to have a jib looking down on a track. I can do these kind of shots where if I'm doing food or if I'm doing over top of somebody lying on a bed. It's so easy to do these type of shots. And again, most people might want to just do it forward and do a shot where you're doing this. One of the things you stay away from on a slider is long lenses. And because of the dampening, I'm able to get very steady shots at 200 millimeters. Just to prove how steady this slider is, I've put the axis slider on at fully extended, and I have a 100 millimeter macro lens pointing at another lens over there, and I'm gonna just slide it across, and you can see using the dampening here how smooth of a shot you can get. I'm finally able to match the drag of my fluid head. So if I set it to the highest setting on my Miller head here, I could dial in a drag setting that kind of matches what I'm doing with my pan head, which makes it easier for me to keep the object in the center of focus when you have similar drag settings. So if I was to keep the D4 logo in the center, it's fairly easy.